Hello students, I am Mahima Thakur, Assistant Professor, Department of English from Ismail National Mahila PG College, MEERUT. Welcome you all for today's lecture. So, the topic of today's lecture is forms of poetry. Before beginning the lecture, I would like to give a brief intro that what we are going to learn in this particular lecture. So first of all, we'll learn what is poetry, and then we'll learn about the forms of poetry and its components through which we recognize that this particular poem is written, in which particular form. So the forms of poetry include the sonnet, the elegy, the lyric, the ode, the epic, the ballet, the dramatic monologue, and the allegory. So we will discuss the meanings of these forms, how to recognize that this particular poem is written in a particular form, the features, and we'll also learn about the famous examples of these kind of forms. So first of all, the question comes, what is poetry? Poetry is a type of literature or artistic writing that attempts to stir a reader's imagination and emotions. So we can say that poetry is meant to be heard and felt, not just read. If we talk about the key components of poetry, so the key components of poetry are form and structure, rhythm and meter, rhyme scheme, imagery, and figurative language. According to William Wordsworth, a very renowned nature poet of English literature, according to him, poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. Very beautiful poem, very beautiful definition of poetry. Further he says, it takes its origin from emotions recollected in tranquility. Here, Wordsworth is trying to emphasize that true poetry is natural. It comes without any force. Poetry is an authentic eruption of deep emotions. It arises from intense experiences which recollected later upon calmly. Forms of poetry. A poetic form, what is form? A poetic form refers to the structural framework within which a poem is composed, including length of the poem, stanza pattern, meter, rhyme scheme, and subject matter. So basically, these are the elements of a poetic forms through which we recognize a particular poem, that particular poem is written in which form. We can say that each form evolved historically to serve specific thematic or aesthetic purposes. So, the first form we have is the sonnet. A sonnet is a fixed poetic form consisting of 14 lines. It was introduced into England by White and Surrey. If we talk about the types of sonnet, so we have two kinds of sonnet. First one is Italian or Petrarchan sonnet, and the second one is English, or we can say Shakespearean sonnets. So how these types are different from each other? In Petrarchan sonnet, we see that this particular Petrarchan sonnet, which is also known by the name of Italian sonnet, is divided into two sections. The first one is octave, which contains 8 lines, and the second one is sestet, which contains 6 lines. Now, the very important feature of this particular sonnet is that it contains volta. There is a presence of volta in this particular sonnet, and it comes after the 8th line. So, volta, what is volta? Volta is the turn of thoughts or the shift of thoughts. As in the octave, we see the poet is posing up. For example, we can say in this particular sonnet, in octave section, we see the poet is posing a question, and in the second half, in the sestet section, we see that he himself is answering that particular question which he is posing in a poem. So, the rhyme scheme of Petrarchan sonnet is ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE, or it can be CDC, CDC. Now we have the other type, which is the English or Shakespearean sonnet. So basically this particular sonnet contains 3 quatrains and a couplet in the end. Quatrain is a 4-line stanza, and what is couplet? Couplet contains 2 lines. Then the rhyme scheme of this particular sonnet is A B A B C D C D E F E F G G. So I have mentioned an example for a better understanding. This poem On His Blindness is by John Milton, who belongs to the 17th century, we can say the Restoration age. And this particular poem is an example of the Petrarchan type, which is also known as Italian sonnet. So this sonnet contains 14 lines, obviously, and divided into 2 sections. The first one is octave and the second one is sestet. So let's see how the rhyme scheme goes. So the first line, last word is spent, so we'll name it as A. Then the last word of the second line is wide. So this wide is giving a different sound with spend. So spend and wide, both are the words giving a different sound. So we'll name it as B. Then the last word of the third line is hide, and it is giving a similar sound as wide. So we'll name it as B. Then the last word of the fourth line is bent, which is giving a similar sound as the first line last word spent, so we'll name it as A. So this is how the rhyme scheme goes: A B B A, A B B A. Then the sestet section, then need, best, state. The need is giving same sound as speed, best is giving the same sound as rest. Then we have state, which is giving the same sound as wait. So the rhyme scheme goes C D E, C D E. So the complete rhyme scheme of this particular sonnet On His Blindness is A B B A, A B B A, C D E, C D E. Now comes the features or themes of sonnet. So usually the themes of sonnet are based on love. This love can be ideal as well as it can be physical. Then we have beauty versus time. This is also a very prominent theme of sonnet. Mortality, poetic immortality, and the presence of volta, very important feature. So just keep in mind that this volta comes in the Petrarchan sonnet. So we also have a very fine examples of sonnet. The first one is sonnet number 18, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day, composed by William Shakespeare. Then we have this poem, John Milton's On His Blindness. Let's move to the other form. So we have the elegy. An elegy is a formal lyric poem written to lament the death of a person while also reflecting on human mortality. So the basic main feature of this particular form is that it laments the death of a person, or we can say a person who has lost. Then it also gives a reflection on human mortality, which says that all of us have to die one day. So this particular elegy shows this truth of life. Then there is structural movement of an elegy. So we see the poem starts with the lamentation. What is lamentation? The expression of grief. So the poet starts the poem with the lamentation. He expresses the grief on the death of that particular person. Then we see praise. In the second half, we see that the poet praises the virtues of that deceased one or the lost one. Then we see consolation. So in the end we see the consolation. So from the lamentation to the consolation, this is how the poem goes. What is consolation? Consolation talks about the philosophical reflection and the acceptance of human mortality. If we talk about the features, so obviously the tone is melancholic, full of sadness, grief. Then we see very grave imagery, like very serious imageries. These imageries can be the imageries of graveyards or such kind of things. Then we have philosophical reflections, which talks about obviously the human mortality, that death is the inevitable truth of life. Then we have the other feature, which is universalization of personal grief. The very fine example of elegy is elegy written in a country churchyard by Thomas Gray, and there is a very beautiful line, the paths of glory lead but to the grave. Now move to the types of elegy. So first one we have classical elegy. So the origin of classic elegy is from ancient Greek and Roman literature. If we talk about the tone, so the tone is formal, structured, and rooted in ancient poetic tradition. The theme of this kind of tragedy, which is known as classical tragedy, concerned not only with death, but also covers the topic of love, war, and personal sorrow. Then the other type we have pastoral elegy, which is a lamentation for the dead in an elaborate style, or we can say in an elevated style. The pastoral conventions of shepherds are discussed in this particular language. It also talks about the rural life, the life of village people, their lifestyle, their way of living, their cultures, their customs, their tradition. And then we have also the discussion of nature in this particular type of poem. And if we talk about the language, so the language is plain or simple. So the very fine example of this kind of elegy we have Milton's Lycidas, and he has composed this poem in the memory of Edward King. Then the second example we have Tennyson's In Memoriam, which was published in 1850, and Tennyson has written this particular poem in the memory of his best friend, and the name of his best friend is Arthur Henry Hallam. So now we have the other form, which is known as the lyric. You can see there is an instrument lyre there. The term lyric originates from the word lyre, which refers to a stringed instrument similar to a harp. As you can see the image, there is an instrument and there are the string in that particular instrument, and it is very similar to harp. It is a short poem. The very prominent feature of lyric is that it is a very short, melodious poem which discusses or reveals the thoughts and feelings, the ideas of poet, what is going on in his mind in a very short form. Then if we talk about the origin, so the origin is from ancient Greece. Lyric poetry combined the music and played on lyre at that point of time. Then it is often considered by its musicality and use of imagery. So these are the very prominent feature. So as we see, if we talk about the features, so musicality, that this particular poem is very melodious, very mesmerizing. Then expression of emotions. Here poet tries to express his thoughts, his feelings in this particular poem. Then if we talk about the speaker, so usually this particular poem is written in first person. Then if we talk about the structure, so structure is very short. It is a short poem. Usually it contains one page. Now let's see the types of lyric poetry. So the first one is, so all these sonnet, elegy, ode, hymn, all these forms consist or comes in the category of lyric. What is hymn? Hymn is a poem or a song of praise, and it is often religious. Then the examples of lyric poetry, a very good example of William Wordsworth. There is a poem, The World is Too Much With Us. It is a prime example of Petrarchan sonnet, and it comes in the category of lyric. And this particular poem functions as a lyric expressing the speaker's personal frustration and materialism. As I have told you earlier, that this particular poem discuss or reveals the thoughts of a poem, the inner psychology of a poet. Now we have the ode. So the ode is a Greek origin. If you talk about the origin of this form, it comes from ancient Greece. Then the word ode has been derived from the Greek word oed. It is a serious composition and it has rhyme scheme too. So basically, in this poem is written in a form of address to a person or a thing. If we talk about the types, so first one we have Pindari code, the main feature of this particular ode is that it focus on a public praise and written in a three-part structure. The three-part structure of Pindari code are strophe, antistrophe, and epode. Then the example of Pindari code are Thomas Gray's The Progress of Poesy and William Collins' Ode to Evening. Now we have other type of ode, which is Horatian ode. This Horatian ode comes on the name of the great Roman poet Horace, and he was the one who has popularized this term, and therefore it is also known as Horatian ode. It consists of many short stanzas. Then we have the third type, which is English ode. So there were many English poets who have imitated the style of Pindar and Horace, but there are few poets who have developed their own style, which is known as English ode. And this English ode is particularly divided into two parts, and we can classify this English ode into two parts. The first one is regular English ode, and the second one is irregular English ode. So, regular English ode, what do we mean by regular English ode? In this particular ode, we see in each stanza the line remains the same. So each stanza carries the same lines. So this is the main feature of regular ode. And if we talk about the irregular ode, it is completely opposite. Each stanza follow the different arrangement of lines. The example of regular English ode is Keats' Ode to Nightingale, and irregular English ode is William Wordsworth's Ode on Immortality. Let's move to the other form. So we have the epic. Epic is a long narrative poem about the great deeds of a legendary hero in an elevated style, in a grand style, we can say. If we talk about the features of the epic is, we see God's relation and support to the hero. So we basically see that gods and goddesses supports the heroes or oppose some other characters. Then we see superhuman adventures in battles and voyages. Then saving or establishing a nation. So basically we see a legendary hero who saves his country. Then the primary, and we talk about the primary or oral epics. So the best examples are the Iliad, Beowulf, Gilgamesh. Then secondary or literary epics, the best examples are Virgil's Aeneid and Milton's Paradise Lost. We also have Indian examples like Ramayana, Mahabharata. All these are the parts of epic. Then we have the ballet. The ballet is a form of song. We can say it is a poem. It is a short tale written in a verse form. It is a poem in short stanza narrating a popular tale. Then if we talk about the theme, so the themes are war, love, revenge, and the supernatural adventures. So basically the recognition of ballet is it is written in a short stanza, and it is we can say a tale in a form of verse. It discusses a popular tale. It can be based on a popular tale also, and themes are love, revenge, supernatural elements. Examples are, very fine example, Coleridge's Ancient Mariner, where we see lots of supernaturalism, the curse, the redemption. Then Keats' famous poem La Belle Dame Sans Mercy. Now, the other form we have dramatic monologue. Monologue, as the term itself suggests, mono means single and log means speech. So this particular form of poetry is a single speech by a single person, and it contains dramatic elements. We can say that's why we called it as dramatic monologue. A dramatic monologue is a type of poem. It comes in the category of type of poem, a kind of poem. It is a kind of speech where a single fictional speaker, that speaker is not the poet, reveals their character, motivation, their inner psychology while addressing a silent listener in a specific situation. So who are the silent listener? The audience. The features, there is one single speaker, Then there is a specific dramatic situation, presence of silent listeners. The silent listeners are the audience. Then psychological depth, it reflects or reveals the inner psychology of the particular character, what is going on in his mind and what he is about to do in the particular play. And self revelation, his through the speech he reveals what is going on in his mind, the doubts, the chaos, the plans, the all these things are revealed in this particular form. The character exposes his true self without realizing it. The famous literary examples are Robert Browning, a very famous poet, and he is called the master of this form, this dramatic monologue. And the very famous dramatic monologue of Robert Browning is My Last Duchess. We also have Ulysses, which is a very famous poem written in a form of dramatic monologue, and it is by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Now the question comes, why it is important in literature? Why this dramatic monologue is important in literature? So it makes poetry realistic through the dramatic elements. We can say it shows human psychology. It reveals the inner psychology, combines drama and poetry. So it is a very different poem, we can say, because it combines poetry and drama together. Then it encourages readers to judge the speaker. So the stage is open for the readers. They can judge according to the speech of a particular character in this particular form of poetry. Then it is a very modern and powerful poetic form, we can say. Now the last form we have is allegory. An allegory is a work that conveys a hidden meaning. This hidden meaning is also called a symbolic meaning. Usually it can be moral, spiritual, political, through the use of symbolic characters and events. So basically the poet used the characters and events or to as a symbol to give an idea in a particular work. This, for example, we can take the story of the tortoise and the hare. It is a well-known allegory with a moral that slow and steady approach. This particular approach is symbolized by the tortoise and is better than a hasty and overconfident approach. And this approach is symbolized by the hare. Here, characters represent, so the characters in this particular form of poetry can represent the good, the bad, the truth, the falsehood, and these kind of human qualities. This because this particular form is based on a moral purpose, so a teaching story in artistic form, we can call it a teaching story in an artistic form. The key features of this particular form of poetry is that it is symbolic in nature, because we see the symbolic characters in this particular form. It gives the moral and philosophical message, and we see continuous metaphors, lot of metaphors in this particular form of poetry, which gives the ideas. Two levels of meaning, we see the basic meaning, the surface meaning. On the other hand, we also see the hidden meaning, the symbolic meaning, often about life's struggle. It also discusses the life struggle also. Then the famous literary examples we have, the Pilgrim's Progress. In this we see life shown as a journey towards salvation. Then we have the other work, which is Animal Farm. Here animal represents political leadership and system. So we see that there are many animals who represents different kind of ideas and thoughts. So why writer use allegory? So the purpose are to teach moral lessons, to criticize society safely, then to explain deep ideas simply, to make story meaningful and memorable. So we can say simple story plus deep message is equal to allegory. So let's discuss some MCQs which will be helpful in your exam. So the first one we have, a sonnet is best described as, it is a 14-line poem, the option B, with a fixed rhyme scheme. Then the second question we have, the main subject of an elegy is death and loss. So we also have other questions. So these kind of questions can be asked in your exams. So, the third question is, which poetic form is mostly closely connected with personal emotion? So, if we talk about the personal emotions, the thoughts and ideas of a poet, so the right answer is C option, lyric. Then ballads were originally, so as we know, these particular form of poetry were based on uh, oral folk songs. So these are the forms of poetry, and these are the questions. You can do a revision. So all these are the form in one picture. Sonnet, which discuss love, time, beauty, and it contains 14 lines, a fixed rhyme scheme, and it particularly gives the purpose of deep emotions. It expresses deep emotions. Then if we talk about elegy, so elegy is particularly based on death, mourning. The lyric, it expresses personal feelings. Ode is all about praise and tribute. Then we have the epic, which discuss heroic adventures in a grand style. Then we have ballad, which discuss folk tales and legends. Dramatic monologue, which is only based on speaker's mind, which is express the psychology of speaker. And then we have allegory, which is based on moral lessons. So this is how you can make notes for yourself. Thank you so much for listening to me.